Daddy, why are you crying? Mommy's in heaven. My wife, after all those hours on the transatlantic flight, got off the plane back home, and home was Poland. She got off the plane and said she didn't feel well. And I said, okay, we'll put the kids in the back seat. It's 5 hours home. They'll sleep, you get to sleep. Just lay your head in my lap. And she did. We got home. She's changing Jeff, our son's, diapers. And I'm out in the front yard, waved at Betty inside the house. And then the next moment, my daughter's coming out. Daddy, Daddy, is Mommy joking? She's lying on the floor. And I said, no, sweetheart, I'm sure she's not joking. She may be just tired. What I didn't know is as I walked in the room, our son was just laying on the diaper changing table, of course not strapped in, immediately put him down and then attend to her, but I could tell, I was pretty sure she was already dead because of her color. So here I am carrying my wife out into the car. She had died, what we now know probably is deep vein thrombosis, blood clots that move to your lungs after sitting, not moving much on a transatlantic flight. And then all of a sudden, everything changed. Now I am a widower with 2 small kids living in a foreign country. So the next morning in Poland in July, I'm up walking the streets of my neighborhood in the rain around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm having a conversation with God. And I said, God, I have to believe that her death is going to cause more people to get engaged with you and to walk rightly with you, to kick myself in the rear end if necessary, but it has to have a purpose. I'm ready to see what that purpose is. So everything was, okay, now what do I do, Lord? Trying to function was all I could do. I mean, it was just tough because there was nobody else to answer the cries or the concerns of the children or the coughing or the vomiting or whatever else. It was, I didn't have that person who I could share my most heretical thought with and know that I was accepted. And I missed that. So, who did I talk to? I talked to God. Constantly. It was a running conversation. It's supposed to be that way all the time. It was that way after I came to Christ back in grad school. It was that way. And here I am back doing the same kind of things, the desperation for God. God is in the pit. He's in the pit. And he was in the pit hours, in the afternoon, evenings with the kids, bedtime, trying to keep the routine, make sure I read to both the kids. Tried to find the most important things, not always doing it right, or doing it the way I wanted to, but at the same time not forsaking them as well. On the day of the funeral, my daughter curled up with me in bed the morning before the funeral service in Omaha. And she was really protective of me as a little 5-year-old. She just wanted to protect her daddy. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. 32 years later. But she said, what's going to happen today? And I explained what was going to happen. And then we're going to sing some songs. Well, what songs? And I said, well, one of the songs she wanted, It Is Well With My Soul. Well, how does that song go, Daddy? And I sang it. Of course, I cried. Because was my soul really good or not? It is well with my soul. Yes, I just cried. It is well. I've been a very happy man for 31 years. It is well because it's God I depend upon, not in my circumstances. And so exactly 1 month after my wife had died, I literally get a call on that Sunday morning from some doctor in San Luis Obispo that says, hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so. If your son doesn't respond in the next 20 minutes, we're going to put him in the hospital. He has asthma. I just didn't have much more inside me to deal with another crisis. And I hung up the phone. I told the doctor I'm coming. I hung up the phone and I remember yelling as loud as I could, "God, you can't do this also. You can't take Jeff's life too." And within 30 seconds I said, "Oh yes, you can." Because God is sovereign. And for me, that's what I clung to through her death, is that He's good and He's sovereign, and I have a choice to make. Do I want to trust Him with it or not? So, here we are. We get to the hospital, and I spent at least 2 nights in the hospital with him. He's wired on steroids, and I can't sleep. So you can imagine my state. It's a good lesson, because that set my absolute lowest point in my life. So I know now when things happen, oh, it's not as bad as Betty's death. Oh, it's not as bad as then Jeff dying, perhaps too. No, it's not. And going back to that walk the morning after her death, I said, God, I have to be ready for whatever you're going to do to use her death to bring more people into your kingdom, or to kick more of us in the rear end to get engaged with you. And the reason that made significance is when we got back home, I was asked by Worldwide Challenge magazine, who had just been in Poland about a month before Betty died, and I had debriefed him as he was leaving, doing this big article for Worldwide Challenge on Eastern Europe falling. And so he said, "Well, Dennis, I don't know how to ask you this." I said, "Greg, I'll do it." Do you see, because of that conversation with God on that walk, I was prepared. I didn't know what He wanted to ask, but I knew magazine, something, and it was about more people coming into the kingdom or walking strongly with God was to be outcome. That was God prompting the words. And these are the things God met me every step of those ways. Coming back, I can say with all candor, 32 years later now, I miss the intimacy I had with God. I know that sounds terrible, but I literally had to depend on Him every moment. And not now. I can get by most of my day without Him, I think. But this is the point that I learned He is so good and He cares for me that He actually met. Fast forward, I grieve with our best friend and co-worker, Kasia. She's in Warsaw, I'm down in Krakow. We talk by phone once or twice or 3 times. We were grieving together, and that was something, a shared experience. Because what God was actually doing was bringing Kasia and myself together. Then we got married a little over a year later, and we've been married 31 years ourselves. But that's how I say God is also the provider. He provided in my deepest ways with every moment of our life. And one beautiful thing about our Lord is that He says, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." He also promises us that there's no place we can go that we can escape Him. So He's there in the moment as Betty's living. He's there in the moment she's dead. And He's there at the moment of my absolute loneliness, or loneliest points. And I often joke I have troubles with deistic thinking. God set the world in motion. And I'm totally willing to trust Him on all of that. But I have to remind myself He's also personal. And He's very interested in meeting me wherever I am emotionally today. And that's God. Now, I knew that intellectually, but I'm forever grateful that I went through this experience to be able to see God show up.